Welcome to the Sustainable Collapse live stream. Where do we want to start, guys? RJ,
Yes.
I'll make you go first.
Who wants to learn about
Apothecary or-
death? Who wants to learn about death and dying at Sustainable Collapse? We know Chris wants to. We talked about it a bit in the first roundtable. The apothecary is what we are calling our fate, our nether realm, well, that's connotative. Our respawn point is going to be the apothecary. And the apothecary is something that was not known to either world pre-collapse. In the rule book, there's a very nice blurb. You'll have to read it when the rule book drops because I'm not reading that whole thing. But essentially, the Janeth Prime and the Fizzlin worlds had made their peace with death. It was either magically subverted or healed, or, you still died. And on Janeth Prime, they had incredible medical and technological ability to stall death, but accidents happened, murder happened, you could still die. Once the collapse happened, and once it started to really even out into the world of Sustainable Collapse that our characters are going to know, it had another change. People started coming back from the dead, and not as just zombies. We understood zombies. This was you. This was a chance. This was, oh, okay, dude, I talked to some guy behind a desk, and he let me gamble for my life, and I'm back. And the apothecary itself is going to have a apothecary aesthetic. There's going to be things on the walls, there's going to be curios, there's going to be things to talk about, look at, touch if you dare, steal if you're stupid, all sorts of things. It's the in-game location that you go to once your character has bled out, died. The way you talk about it in-game is going to be you walk the black path. It's a black flagstone path, some people call differently. They see a gravel path. Either way, that path, what we all know as, I'm going to put my hand on my head, I'm going to walk to fate, is still an in-game, I like that, Marcy, highway to hell. It's still an in-game part of the world. It is not just walking very slowly from the mod back to fate because you're not getting back in time, but you need a breather. Dave, it is playable. It is something, there are going to be skills, very tightly controlled skills, but there's going to be skills that you can interact with people on that black path. There's going to be creatures and entities and good and bad guys that are going to be able to alter that path. Who knows? You might get a note on your character card that says, don't go to the apothecary, come to cast. And then you'll pee and everybody will be happy. And once you go to the apothecary, you're going to have a bag of marbles. We had ideas of like, draw stones or lots, or what if we could do a D20? Wouldn't that be? No, it's colored marbles, and you are going to have a chance to come back to life with a neutral blessing, which is you're going to be restored back to life with your full vitality, but you're not going to have your memories of your death. So that 5 minutes of dead, dying, bleeding out, that's a 65% chance. You have a 20% chance. You lost your marbles. Yes. You have a 20% chance to come back as blessed, which is full vitality. You have your memory of your death, and you have your skills, your mana restored. You have a 10% chance of coming back cursed. And that is full vitality and a memory of your death, but you have a weakened soul, which is MJ's rule no sojourn. If you die again within an hour, you're going to die for real. And then you have a 5% chance of final death. When you start, it's 20 stones in total. Have we considered a deck of custom cards instead of marbles? We've talked about it. I don't know if Dave would want to talk about custom cards but it's not, you are not going to carry around a bag of marbles. It's going to be us having them. No worries. Periodically, the neutral stones are going to get removed from the bag. And there's also going to be a blessed, two of the blessed and one of the cursed are going to leave out of the bag. And once you are no longer a new player, I think we're giving people a year or 6 games or so. You will start losing those. You'll have the chance to final. You'll start losing those stones as you play. You cannot remove the final death. You can't remove that last blessed or cursed. There's going to be ways to screw with people if you want to be that kind of person. There is going to be a singular second chance that you get as a token. So that first time that you get told by the apothecary you're not going back, you have an ability to get a second chance. Only one per character. Only one per character. You as a player can get another one for your next character, things like that. There's going to be a last rites ability. So if you find somebody that is dead, you can give them last rites and it will leave a blessing. It'll reduce whatever they draw. So a final death will be a cursed will be a neutral. A tainted soul ability, same thing as last rites, but in the reverse. You can make someone's chance worse. And then there's going to be other various skills that come in and you can work toward it. If you want to be someone who only does medical or only plays as a tender of the black path, which is what the people who worship the apothecary worship death, will be generally known as. There's a couple of different religions that we've set up that touch on death, but that tender of the black path is who is going to really have that role play with not only the black path, but also death and dying.
Right then. Jess.
Hi.
Because Sky said that they wanted to follow you after the with the PAGU stuff. So
Thanks, Sky. Should I introduce myself in the context of this game? Because that isn't a thing that I've publicly done in any way.
I mean, if you want.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess, also known as the perma staffer with too many hobbies and commitment issues. I will be around. I will be helping with things off screen, probably writing. I cannot necessarily commit to being at games at this point because too many hobbies is not an understatement. But I'm official dark side in whatever capacity my schedule and sanity will allow. So I've been working with Dave on writing up the goblins, which is half me having ideas and half me writing down Dave's inner goblin soul. Because we know this is mostly him. Nobody could deny that. Publicly in-game, there are very few things that the general public knows for sure about how goblin culture works. This is because pretty much every goblin that ever talks to you about what life back home is likely to be lying to your face, contradict every other goblin you've ever spoken to, and every single one you meet will neither confirm or deny any other rumor they mention. Or if they do, you know you aren't actually going to believe them. And you shouldn't. There are a few things that most people can agree on, though. One of those is that the goblin tunnels are not easy to find, and they do not welcome outsiders. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody's aunt who got invited and has been inside. But pretty much like every other goblin story you've heard, what they saw when they were inside is going to be varied widely, depending on who you ask, if they've actually been there at all. You hear about the matrons often, but again, rumors, legend, lore, insanity, how much of it is true. Goblins in general are uncannily good at engineering and specific subsets of chemistry, specifically structural physics and explosive ordnances. Trying to learn any of this ability from them is frustrating to pretty much every scientist, because they are more than likely to try and see how ridiculous they can convince you to act in the name of science than to actually guide you through the process of what they've done. Explanations usually involve a shrug of, I don't know, I just did a thing, or somebody just smashed a couple ingredients together and something went boom, and then we just continued making boom goop. I don't know. Whether or not you believe those explanations is entirely up to you. As much as I don't want to use the word trolling, because trolls are a real thing in most fantasy games, and I'm not trying to allude to that. Goblins in general are trolls in our modern language. As much as that is true, goblins as a whole, they aren't reclusive in the way you would think of they're doing this to be malicious, they're doing this to be mean. And they have willingly come out and assisted the rest of the world when needed and when they want to. So goblins do get seen outside. They do talk to you. They are friendly in the way that goblins are friendly. They just communicate differently than you're used to. Over the course of history, during the collapse, during the war, during the Accords, everything that's come after, there have been goblins who show up and say, I want to be involved. I know a thing. Let me help. Especially when things are cataclysmic, when things are important. They are willing to help grow society and keep society moving. They just value the privacy of their own history and their own culture. So they're not going to be honest about it because they'd rather you leave them alone if you can. But this isn't them saying, we're hiding under our rock and you're never allowed to talk to us ever. They have disturbingly dark senses of humor. The more serious the moment is, the worse the jokes are probably going to get. Whether or not you consider barbed insults, mocking, and other such behavior as a sign that a goblin considers you a friend, up to you. They do it with pretty much everybody, so it really is a toss-up.
Dave, how about that? So I was distracted for a second there. Jess, did you cover PAG at all or no?
I did not. One thing that I don't know if I phrased quite clearly, though, is every major moment in history, the goblins are around, specifically because of their ability to deal with structural physics, engineering, physically keeping tunnels from falling apart. That knowledge was very useful when worlds decided to mysteriously collide and things went absolutely haywire. Hey, Sky, you might know a little bit more about what happened next.
Thanks for that. We're doing news anchor stuff now. Well, you know, this week's weather is looking a little bit colder than usual. Anyway, so like Jess was saying, when you suddenly have a mass structural failure, you know, planet-wide, suddenly the goblins get interested. One, because, you know, all of their tunnels are suddenly under a lot more stress than they used to be and or half don't exist. But also because they are suddenly the people to be talking with, right? You have two planets which are on the verge of collapse, and once you're done fighting it out and realize that you actually have to talk to each other, you start looking for the people who know how to keep things from falling down. So after the initial conflicts following the collapse, we have the Accords, where all of, you know, the representatives from Janeth Prime and the representatives from Thisland come together to try and figure out the best way to move forward and keep the planets from collapsing so everybody lives. The goblins are there representing themselves in the unique way that they do. And in the middle of the debate of how best to stabilize the planet, one of them casually mentions that, oh, yeah, you know, Bob does that. And, you know, there's some glances their way, and Bob does what? Well, Bob just makes tunnels not fall down. And what unfolds from that conversation is that goblins know how to talk to rocks. Goblins know how to talk a little bit. They have this innate ability. Some of them have this just unquestioned ability to just kind of whisper sweet words to the tunnels and keep them from falling over. They don't really have a real fundamental understanding on why. They just know that certain people are really skilled at keeping things from falling over, at which point the people at the Accords step forward and say, hey, could you please get us Bob? And pretty much anybody else that knows how to do that. Enter PAG, the Planar Anchor Group, who are the eventual combination of scientists and magicians who joined forces to help stabilize the new planet. They worked with the goblins in order to start developing magic and science and try and find a way to stabilize everything. And a lot of that dealt with watching the goblins do their thing and being taught by the goblins how to do what they were doing. And you've got, you know, Janeth Prime structural engineers combined with Fizzlin's magicians and mages, all just sitting there and watching what's going on and figuring it out. What that translates to in our game is the introduction of a magical school, which I am very excited about. We are going to have what we have been calling the Grav Rad School, but it is physics and radiation. So we are having a school of magic whose primary basis is manipulating radiation and physical forces, which is going to make for a lot of really exciting spells. I've got some of it worked up. I'm not going to go through all of it, obviously, but I did want to mention just a couple of the really cool things that we're excited about. Probably the thing that I've dug into the most is radiation, just because of how broad of a spectrum we have to work with. And at your base, you have your radiation damage. But in addition to that, we have things like radiation sickness, which is a pain spell, or heat wave, which does a knockback effect. But in addition to that, we have things like body scan, which I'm really excited about. Body scan allows you to use x-rays to identify injuries. So you would approach someone who's injured, state begin scan while touching them with a spell packet, role play examining them for about 10 seconds. And then if that person is healed before they take further damage, so they go immediately to a healer or they aren't damaged before they find a healer, the first healing spell takes half of the normal time, takes half duration. So they just state, I have body scan, and that healer knows that any first spell that gets cast on them takes half the time. It allows for quicker healing in the moment. So kind of playing on that, you know, X-ray side of things. And that gets brought up again with mechanism scan, which is a higher level spell, which allows X-rays to be used to identify mechanism workings and takes down the difficulty level of disarming certain mechanisms. Other things that we're playing with, sterilization, which allows you to neutralize poisons or diseases, radiation poisoning and toxins, which cause, you know, weakness and effects at various levels. electromagnetic radiation, which is a very high level spell, so closer to the master tier, which allows you to manipulate the electromagnetic radiation that interferes with people's brains and get them to do one bidding. All the way up to nuclear explosion, which causes you to lose your mana and your ability to cast magic temporarily, but allows you to do a mass amount of damage all at once. So that's sort of what we're looking at for radiation, and just playing with a lot of different things. But we're also looking at gravity, magnetics, physics in general, for increasing gravity to slow people down, using gravity to cause damage, creating gravity wells, which trap people in specific places, and also, all of the things that we can do with magnetism. All in all, it's just a new school of magic that we're really stoked about, and that is going to open up a lot of opportunities for some really interesting role play. And I feel like is kind of a field of magic that hasn't been explored a whole lot. So it's going to give us a lot to play with that I don't think people have encountered before. So that's the Grab Rad School, and yeah, that's where we're at.
More
Sure.
overtime.
The first culture that is in my document, there's no rhyme or reason to me choosing this one first. It's the City of Calm, spelled Kahlm, and it is the City of Dragons. It's a area within a larger culture called Gamar, and it is deep in the Gamarian desert. It's located on a very peculiar white and black granite cliff. And the first people that arrived there were like, this is beautiful, we can carve, we can do incredible stonework, and it was wonderful. Until the next season came, and all of the dragons that were hibernating or bruminating technically in the rocks started attacking the town. Over the course of living there, the people decided that this was horrible and terrible, until a painter had gone out into the desert a ways and was painting, and they realized, oh, the windows, the domes that we have on our buildings, it looks like the burrows that these creatures, these dragons, have driven into the rock. And they realized that the dragons were not attacking so much as they were getting really confused as to why there were screaming humans in their cliff faces. And over the course of the years, this has become a main attraction of Calm. You can go there. There are dragons here. It is an animal that is in this desert, in this area, and the people that are there kind of have them in this place of love that people who live by the ocean kind of reserve for ospreys or other fishing hawks. They're going to steal your food, but they're really pretty and they're really interesting to have nearby. And the city itself is part of a larger culture that rests heavily on artistic influence. There's a lot of astronomy, and there's a lot of poetry, and there is, let me look down here. There's a lot of open air cafe, open air market and food and vending, but a lot of the city is actually underground now because you don't really want to have a kebab stand when there are giant meat-eating lizards flying around. So that is the first one that I was going to talk about, and there is a little lore pack. Yes, Venice, but with dragon pests. Yes, entirely. And if anybody has any questions that will help me further develop what people are looking for in lore packets, in information, please ask. No, instead, Lipton, which I have been told by many people I need to rename because Lipton is a type of tea, but I don't know. I'll figure out a name, or we will have Lipton as a country. But this is a a brisk kind of Norwegian. There's icebergs. It's cold, but they still have seasons. Positive traits from this culture are like they're independent, they're caring people, they're very sturdy people, but they can also be a little passive aggressive. They have completely mastered the art of asking a question sideways or not asking at all, which the reason is a local type of undead called a Fianinen, which is very fun to say, Fianinen. And it is in soup. Oh, it's a soup brand as well? Okay. Maybe we have to change it, but I still love Lipton. But this undead occurs only in this area, and only by those victims that have frozen to death. It is a very distinctive undead that comes, and you see they have the blue lips, they have the stiff movements, and they will come and they will beg for warmth. They will ask to come and sit by the fire. They will come and ask for a warm drink. And how to defeat them or deal with them, obviously you'll find out in game if you ever encounter them. But because of this, there's just the cultural desire to not, you don't say, oh man, I'm really cold, can you make me a cup of tea? But you do say, you know, oh, a cup of tea would be lovely on a day like today. Yes, we defeat the undead by giving them blankets, Crystal. But it has bled over into everything in the country. It is also a very independent culture. So Minnesota, yes, it is Minnesota, and everybody gets cheese curds. And they're independent. They have their kids go out and roam in little packs of age mates. Culturally, it's called mergersi, which is ice cubes in whatever Norwegian dialect I was finding. And a lot of small businesses in the area are very specific. In my write-up, I say that there is a exclusively left-handed corncob trimmer can make enough money to raise their family. And it's a very small, very close-knit, kind of idyllic place until the winter comes. Until winter comes and the icebergs coalesce and you can't get in, you can't get out. It becomes very isolating. So that's the really markedness of that culture, is that everybody is there and they know their neighbor, but it's still terrifying to have a knock on the door in the winter because you don't know if it is a friend, you do not know if it is someone who went missing a few weeks ago in the fjord, in the woods, and they've come back. And it's a very sad, culturally they don't view undead as a scary thing, they view it as a sad thing because it is a literal lost soul.
Hey, now that Chris is back, shall we riff about Carcer?
What did you say?
I said, now that Chris is back, shall we riff about Carcer?
Yes.
Okay, so Carcer, oh, those guys, those crazy, crazy guys. So we've talked about PAG because the Planar Anchor Group is fun. I know. I just got distracted, derailed, back again. Okay. So when things fell apart and we're trying to put them back together, one of the biggest things that they needed was a place to stuff the researchers in that was stable enough that it wasn't going to fall apart, sturdy enough that it was going to not be affected badly by storms that were still raging across the world. And one of the best places that they found was an old military base that happened to survive the collapse. At the time, it was held by a band of mercenaries from Janeth Prime. And they said, sure, you can use our base, but we want to cut. Eventually, Carcer developed from a mercenary band to a... Why are you looking at me like that, Sky? No? Now you're shaking
No
your head.
reason, just faces.
Just faces?
It
Okay.
makes like a resting frustration face when they read. That's about it.
Oh, okay. Eventually it turned into a colonizing group. Is that the right word? Where the other countries and kingdoms could dump their undesirables, kind of like Australia. They have colonies set up along the wastelands in all 8 of the regions of the world. No, 7. Thank you. Colony life is pretty chill. Not everybody who's in there is there because they were sent there, some were born there. There's there's a couple of generations that grew up in the colonies. Carcer provides security details to watch and make sure that nothing gets too crazy or that any external threats are dealt with properly. But for the most part, they ignore the colonists, or they're not indifferent towards them, but life goes on. It's anyway. I mean, there's a lot. There was a lot of discussion about holding the game in one of these colonies, because obviously, you know, throwing, hey, guess what? You live in a prison, is not going to go over well with everybody. I think we did a pretty good job of working out how we can do that without making it uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of conversation around that, and where we're at right now is that you can come in as a prisoner, but there are a lot of other options that make sense where you don't even have to be associated directly with the prison if you don't want to be. You know, you can come in as a prisoner with, you know,
Colonists, they don't call them prisoners.
sorry, colonists, with as, you know, much of a heady or otherwise background as you want. There's a little bit of kind of New South Wales vibes with this, where it's like some people are here because they, you know, murdered somebody, and some people are here because they stole the wrong person's handkerchief, you know.
They walked outside without a hat on.
There's
It's a crime.
options.
You know.
But so that is one option. The other option is you can come in as a scientist, you can come in as just kind of a local, like, person who lives in the area, and that has a ton of different background options. So the goal obviously was to keep it from being like you have to come in and be serving a sentence and like, ooh, and we don't want that to be the vibe, right? So we're sticking clear of that, but still able to work with that colony vibe of the being out in the middle of nowhere and kind of having that isolated experience. The other thing that we wanted to avoid as well was kind of playing into that really kind of nasty power dynamic that you get in, you know, US prisons, because that's not the vibe we want to go for. But that is kind of, I think, mitigated a lot of that by making this a colony that's based primarily in exploration, and is corrupt enough to be fairly merit-based, i.e. they don't really care what the colonists, are doing, as long as they are bringing in funds, and, you know, at that point, like, whatever, it's good. So we still have an element of that power dynamic where we're able to have a hierarchy, but at the same time, prisoners have a lot of autonomy. Colonists, Jesus, have a lot of autonomy themselves, where they're able to, you know, go out and find special snazzy stuff and have power within that system because, you know, they have things to barter with and work around. So the hope is to be able to play with a lot of the fun elements of that type of setup while avoiding a lot of the pitfalls that our kind of modern dystopia is leading us into. But obviously, you know, if you hear somebody having a concern about that, or you encounter somebody who's like, hey, this setting seems odd because insert bad vibe here, please either forward that to us or encourage them to talk to us, because, you know, that's not by any means the vibe we want to portray. We want to play with this in a way that makes it fun for everybody. You know, so if you see a red flag or even kind of a vaguely orangish one, feel free to let us know.
Yeah,
Plus, I
this
think.
is
Oops, go ahead.
the one time I willingly admit myself. This is not the paid to play Stanford Prison Experiment, right? This is more like the Great Irish Famine colonists, but there's also goblins running around. And so, as Sky said, we worked with a LARPing and color consultant to talk about the idea of a penal colony. Our team has gone over the societal implications 100 times, but if it starts to toe that line, or if these power dynamics come up in game and are making you or someone you know uncomfortable, this team is not just receptive, but we really, really want to hear that before it happens. But when it happens, please do not be shy about coming forward to our cast and to our game development team about anything that puts you off in a way that breaks your immersion or breaks your experience.
Yeah, absolutely on that one. Thanks. Yeah, that's a huge thing. And I think we covered it pretty well in the rule book, spelling it out what life in the colonies is. For anybody who's actually read that part. Because it's just
While he's poking at that, another quick comment on trying to make this a fairly comfortable and not cringy experience. Even the few conversations I've had over the last week of trying to get the Goblin Society figured out, the interior checks and balances between this team are always happening. And hey, this is a vibe that could be read from what you just wrote. Be aware. So if you're doing that intentionally, you should know. And if you're doing it accidentally, you should get rid of it. So everybody's sort of looking at what's being written with the eye for, let's make sure we are making what we want to make and having it read the way we want it to be read, so that we're not accidentally causing harm.
Kim, go ahead, put it up.
Okay.
That's the big map.
This is the big map. Yes. So this is the big pretty map.
Love it.
This is our world. And I didn't divide them into the regions on this one, so we're just gonna zoom in. Come on.
Hey,
Trying to
look,
take
it's
this
our
a little
island.
slower. So this is our island. This is where we're based out of.
Home sweet inhospitable home.
I was going to say we are here, but you can't see where I'm pointing.
No, we are somewhere around here.
Far back from the coast that we never have to explain why we don't have a beach. But close enough to the port so that we can have access to supplies coming in and out.
Have to come to terms
Chris
with
is
it.
asking, we are shrinking tech, right?
No, I think it's a little bit outside of our abilities right now.
Ant-Man moment.
Yeah, no Ant-Man moments.
No, I don't think so.
Have we mentioned the tech at all as a side note?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Yeah, so the tech is kind of limited. You know, after the collapse, the things going on in the atmosphere, the wild energies. I know it's off. It's okay. I'll put it back on in a second. Where was I? Oh yeah. So the tech doesn't really mesh well with this world. Kind of like the magic isn't nearly as potent as it was before the collapse in this. Right now, I think we agreed upon like late 80s max for tech that would still function. Unless it
We agreed on
requires what?
We agreed pretty much anything that didn't require a communication with another entity. So like a minor computer chip, like something for a watch, would still function. Walkie-talkies function because they utilize radio waves, but that anytime you need to, like, networking is a no-go. But that was a conversation we had a while ago, and obviously this is still kind of in discussion as far as what the world is going to look like.
I think the communication issue was more because it's hard to run lines through the wastes and the wilds. Magic screws with the tech hard there, and especially in the wilds.
Never mind.
It was anything that
satellite.
required a satellite was definitely off limits. We're gonna have to discuss whether or not anybody's tried to even get a satellite up since the collapse, but that's for another discussion.
Dragons knock them out
It's
of the
certainly
air.
not
Done.
being by colonists.
Yeah. Although I see plot there too. Anyway. I know. No, because I can see somebody, Crystal's asked was more 50s and 60s and 80s. And I'm seeing that it would be entirely possible to, VCRs, especially with some of the videos we've got out for TikTok. And especially since I want videos for incoming colonists, because that would be fun.
But also it's a game, and sometimes things work because we wanted them to work, and sometimes they don't work because, God, that's expensive and complicated, so no.
Two
Well,
worlds straight up collided. Things are going to be unpredictable, and we're all along for the ride.
Well, that was a huge reason for not having a computer network or an internet. Because tech is expensive and code monkeys aren't cheap either. So it was a financial decision more than anything else. All right, so Kim's currently indisposed. So let's go back to RJ for another culture lesson.
The next culture. Dave, what was the other one I said I was going to talk about? Doesn't matter. We're doing Vargan. Vargan is a culture to choose if you like etiquette, if you like potion making, if you like dramatic French romance stories with, the soft paper cover. It's this land of really beautiful, lush, rolling hills. There's weeping willows, there's ponds, and there is a big penchant for statue gardens, and gardening is a huge thing in these people because they love flowers. The cultivation of both natural, local, endemic species, and a real drive to get specimens from other places to grow. There's greenhouses everywhere, and it's a real point of pride. The reason being is that Vargan is one of the world's leading suppliers of poisons and other potion components. They are comparatively low tech. There's very little magic use, and they're really a crafting people. They're using what they can and what they have to as far as technology and magic is concerned, but they really like the hands-on, the mortar and pestle, the actual act of making something. They have a purposefully convoluted bureaucracy that is so distinctly ineffective and confusing that the people know it is better to resolve disputes between parties at all costs themselves rather than invite the rigmarole of the local magistrate circus, because it's just not worth it. By the time it goes up and up and up and up through the different magistrate levels, you will have died before getting your, 40 units of currency to repair your fence that your neighbor broke. It's elegant, even its inefficiency, and has this charming undercurrent of bribes and favors and quid pro quo. So it's a common phrase in Vargan to seek forgiveness rather than permission for something. And it's always better to handle it yourself than it is to involve somebody else. The people themselves are very colorful. They love, hi Yoda. They love flowing, flowery, highly decorated clothing. People that like the language of flowers and dyes and colors. That's a very historical and classic and traditional part of their culture, though in modern times you'll hear the elders talking about kids these days. They'll wear a marigold next to a gardenia and they don't care what it means. They just think it looks cool. So if you want to have a distinctive aesthetic, but you also want to have lots of little inside jokes in your garb or in your decoration of your garb, it would be a good place to be. But it would also be a good place to be if you want to have those crafting skills, you want to make those potions, if you want to be the alchemy cult of Ishtar, if you want to be the poison seller who's with the little drops of everything, that's really their jive. They do a lot of tea time as well in that culture. Danger tea time.
Kim, you're back.
I am back.
Kickstarter?
Sure.
Oh, I have a graphic to share. Yes, start talking. I'll find the thing.
All right, so we are launching a Kickstarter for Susco. It should be launching the 14th,
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Why Dave picked that date, I do not know.
It was an accident.
Because
So
we love Susco.
Yeah, actually, Allison did say it's a labor of love. It makes sense.
very nice. So we are trying to use the Kickstarter to help fund a little bit of what we need to get going. It honestly is going to have a, oh, I was like, what are you doing? It's got a pretty small goal amount compared to what we actually need to raise, but I think that's just us going safety wise. We're hoping to go above and beyond what that is. Because as many people know, if you do not raise the right amount in Kickstarter, you do not get anything. So we're hoping that by putting it out there, we will definitely get some interest in not just our community in New England, but everywhere. There's a lot of people on Kickstarter who actively look for certain types of Kickstarters just to help fund them every little bit they can. I know friends of mine who randomly kick things in, I don't know, Australia or something, just because. So we do have really cool rewards, as Dave is so kindly showing everyone. They are named ridiculously.
As our brand.
And yeah, as our brand. So just going over briefly, there's simple ones like, get your name put in the rule book as a donator. You get a really cool spell packet that RJ is making. Obviously, you get access to the pre-release rule book. There's patches. There's the PAG patch and the Carcer Corp patch available. You can have a name of a noble family or a, you know, an important, I don't know. What did we decide? It was the important
A noble
group
family
of
or
people?
political family.
that, yeah.
There's also the option of naming a corporation.
Or a corporation, right? There's a regulation uniform, which is just a t-shirt with our really cool design that Sky is finished.
Yeah, I can share that.
Yeah.
Or Dave can.
Or it's a surprise. We're not really sure at this point. There's also the big one that you guys can, and anybody can sort of pop in on. It's culturally inept is what it's called. And you work with one of us, realistically, and build a culture that will show up in the world. Some of them are bottomless. You can have as many people as you want. Kicking, I guess that's the way to do it, kicking us. But some of the other ones, like the bigger ones, the noble name indeed has a limit, the culturally inept has a limit, so first come first serve kind of vibe, which will be pretty fun. I'm trying to think of what else do I have to tell them? On the Kickstarter itself, we break down the whole goal, the reason why we need as much funding as possible. One of the things that Kickstarter actually asks you to do is explain what the money is going towards. So that was pretty easy for us. We broke down where it's all going. You know, we made a video for the little introduction about it. We gave a little bit of information about the game itself, what we're hoping to get out of it in general, so people can learn about that. And it goes up on 14th, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a, hold on, I had it. Where did it go?
Monday.
It's a Monday.
Monday.
So Monday. You can go in with the pre-release and like sign up to find out if you guys, you know, are interested in that, and sharing it. Basically, we're just trying to put it out there right now so that we all get it out as much as possible before it releases. So that's pretty much it, I think. Oh, are we showing the
That's a big
shirt image, Dave?
Sure.
And we have a question from Chris on like, are the rewards stackable? So if you do one of the rewards
Yeah,
in the middle,
so-
do you get the things before it?
The way that I actually had to go back in and design it, because I did not know this until I looked at it again, thank you, Dave, is that you have the ability to get a few of them backdated. Like if you get the $2 one, you won't get anything because it's the first one you got. But if you go and throw in like, you know, $30 for your security patch update, you'll get your name in the book, you'll get a spell packet, and you'll get the pre-release. Some of the bigger things we're not doing that with. So for example, the noble name indeed, if you purchase that, if you kick that specific goal or reward, you're going to get everything below that. But as you move upwards, you're not going to get that because it does have a limited amount. So we wouldn't be able to offer it to every person who bought beforehand. That and the culturally inept, I believe, are the two that you're not going to get like extras of. But I think that's it. Everything else is pretty much you purchase up and you get all the back tier.
So this will be the design. So just playing off of, you know, old console command green. Have a little fun with it. It does look better on black, personally. And it is going to be on a black shirt, so
And the Susco logo will be on the back.
the Susco logo will be on the reverse. Yeah.
Looks good.
Do you have the Peg and Carcer patches, Andy?
Yes. Second. All right, I can show the Carcer tag patches if you guys want.
Go for it.
All right, so this is the Carcer Fort patch. It's what you guys have seen in some of the dropped videos already.
Fun fact, Sky doodled that on a random like lined page one day just for shiggles.
Was it a line page or was it graph?
That was a line
It was just a notebook.
with a blue pen because that's what we had.
No, and then I did it on graph paper afterwards because I realized that the freaking C's were going to be really hard to make clean. And then the other one is our tag logo, the Planar Anchor Group. You can thank Dave for this atrocious color scheme.
It's beautiful.
Replace all of your 80s favorites with
I love it.
yellow.
Beautiful.
So those will be the two patches that we have available. I'm super stoked about them. They have really neat vibes. And between that and the t-shirt, we've got some really cool stuff available through the Kickstarter. So, yep. That's what I got.
So all I got left for the Kickstarter is, please, for the love of all that is unholy, share the link. Share any of the stuff that we post about it, because we need to get the signal boosted as high as possible. I can't stress enough how much we need the Kickstarter to be a success if we're going to get this game off the ground. Sure, why not?
Yes, there's definitely room for that. And there's also, I guess I can talk about one more. It's called the Blackbirds. The actual region is called the Nest. And the introduction is, the Blackbirds are a nation of people created not unlike how a landfill can transform into a thriving forest. Time, compaction, and the indomitable will to survive found in all living things. People should choose this culture if you like shiny things, petty crime, and outlaw stories. And it's basically a bunch of people that said, I'm not going to a Carcer Corp colony, and they were banished to the waste, and they kind of aggregated together in a very terrible, terrible place that grows a lot of mushrooms, potatoes, and like more mushrooms.
I'm so sick
Also,
of
we
it.
are still looking for people to be involved in the cast and creation. So like if there's somebody you know who doesn't want to play but is like super creative, like throw them at us.
Yeah, because the people I've been trying to recruit for the cast side are like, no, I want to play this.
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
Which is flattering but frustrating.
Well, yeah, okay, very flattering, yes, but some of these people, I'm like, no, I don't want you to play. I want you to come work with us. You can tell all your friends to come and play. That's great. You are on the wrong side of the game. And Chris, to go with what you're saying, everyone is the same race with added effects is nice, so no one gets extra perks from doing makeup. Yeah, that was a discussion. And it started back before we even started Susco. Because it's one of the things that kind of drives me nuts in the LARP community in general, is trying to balance skills for makeup and extensive costuming, and it gets to a point where it feels more like gatekeeping than anything else. In fact, the same conversation applied to the armor as well. So yeah, everybody's human. All the players are human. Not everything out there that's sentient and self-aware is going to be human. The goblin's definitely not human.
Whether or not a goblin chooses to look like a human, because that technology works both ways, is also a thing.
If you manage to find dwarf
Oh my God, you
bones,
just broke
they
my
will not
mind.
look human.
Jess,
I
that's
win.
horrible. Why would
I
you do this to me
win.
right now?
Question on starting character points. In the character creation, it looks like a max of 120 to start, but at the end of the book, it says 150.
Yes, there may be ways to get additional points through donations and stuff to bump yourself up to 150 to start. There have been some changes to the rule book for rebalancing issues. I found a couple of snags, but I think I've got it watered again. So there will be some changes to that when the beta is released.
By a couple of snags, he means he had people build characters and found that there were broken items.
Actually, no, I didn't, nobody caught it until I started working on the advanced stuff. I was like, oh, wait, they're gonna hit the, no. We can't have this. So yeah, there was a little bit of brake pumping in there to slow down character growth, just a tiny bit, because it was the way it was structured, it was going to get out of control really fast.
They'll never
But
tell.
we got a question here. Amber says, so as far as cultures go, how important will it be for your character? I have horrible executive dysfunction, forget things constantly. So I guess if I'm asking if there's a culture appropriate for someone who just has avoided everyone and just about everything until they show up essentially.
Let me tell you that there are 3 that are perfect for that.
Also, okay, never mind. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was also going to say also we're going to be in the colony, so whether you want your culture to be something that truly informs who your character is, or if it's like you don't need to. There's in the same way that people do their role play based on their character backstory, or they do their role play based on their role, the actual things they're doing in game skill wise, or you join in another game you join the militia and that becomes your drive. Your culture is more to give people a place to anchor their character with, but you're going to be in the colony, so if you want to be a colonist, or if you want to be a scientist, or if you want to be a murder hobo, it's all up to you.
No murder hobos. No murder hobos, no orphans.
Oh, we're gonna have so many of both.
There's also something that, like, in most LARPs where you have people who aren't all entirely jerks, if you forget bits of the backstory of the extensive written culture, if you're standing there going, yeah, the name of that place that I totally visited, and you're looking at the person across from you, if they get mad at you for that, they're horrible. Because I know most of us play multiple games, and sometimes names get crossed in your brain, and sometimes you forget things because names and words, and we write lots of weird new words that have no analog. So if you forget something and you say, I know I should know this because that's where I come from, can you give me the name, please? People should help you out, because hopefully the game has nice people in it. That's the goal.
And
So
if
it's
someone's
also
mean to
kind of
you,
like,
well, if someone's mean to you, the game also has nice cast. So that's my contribution there, is feel free to come talk to us, whether it's to remember something or because someone, I don't know, bullied you for forgetting the intricacies of the Dragon Mountains. We're here for you.
So Chris asks, what about a nomad one from the wastes?
I mean, yeah, sure. Rulebook question. It is a rulebook question. Crafting will be a CP cost. Yes, it will be CP cost. Currently, And I'm pretty sure the system's done. Pretty sure. I'm gonna take a look at it one more time. Currently they all have 10 skills. Each of the, how many? How many crafting trees are there? A lot. There's 11. That's right, 11, because the target number was 110 skills, 10 for each. It worked. So yeah, that'll be being dropped soonish. Of course, it might have to wait until the beta rule book. I don't know. We'll see. I might feel generous and let it go early. But yeah, CP cost. Oh, hey, I'm back. That's my cue, isn't it? All right. So where are we at? Should I bother asking about questions again? Maybe.
It looks like there is at least one person skimming through the rules as we speak, so maybe a few more minutes.
How are the melee points replenished? Like agility. Okay. Not quite sure how we're going to handle that, Chris. We floated the idea of end of night, waking up in the morning refreshed. We got to take a look at how that's going to balance out with everything.
I'm curious if you all have, thoughts on that. Like, do you guys have a preference on whether or not you have an action in game that you take to replenish, whether it is on a, clock schedule every morning, whether it is, higher numbers and a weekend refresh? What are people's thoughts? Amber says you could go with a long rest, essentially sleep at least 6 hours or something equivalent, then it can be floating with people's preferences.
Yeah, with the game full stop at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. What did we say? Did we say 1, 2? 2. Full game stop from 2 to 9. So sleeping in the middle of a game for 6 hours? That sounds like missing 6 hours. All right, fair enough. It'd be much easier to keep track of it if it was at the beginning of every day.
Either that or like start of game, mid-afternoon, end of game, or something like that, depending on how often you wanted the refresh.
Like Crystal just pointed out, at beginning a game or regularly.
It's okay.
So the question is there a limit to how many vials of holy water could theoretically turn in?
I mean, theoretical limit, I'd have to math. But I suppose you could spend every single point in creating holy water, and it would be a lot. It's 1 per purchase of the skill. Can we do that? Can we have somebody who just makes holy water? Full cap?
Our sacred faucet.
It could just be that.
Yes.
You just get to a point where you're just like, oh, you need holy water? Here you go. Except you're faking it, obviously, because COVID and germs and LARPers are gross.
New Hierophant skill?
Throwing in the asterisk because somebody would actually do it, and you know that.
Jess, new Hierophant skill?
It fits.
It's wrong. Well, come up with something quick. No, all right. Um, ooh, I could be really mean and make Mumbles talk about something.
Is there anything I can talk about that is legal? I'll just start going in on dwarves. I don't know what I'm gonna say about them.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna say. You don't know what I'm gonna say. I don't know if it's written down anywhere. I can do it. If you want me to talk, I'll talk.
I
Play
mean,
this
just as long as
game.
you remember how the story ends.
That's not an
Oh, yeah.
offer. That was a threat.
Dwarves. I'll talk about them for about 30 seconds because they're all dead. I don't know.
Well, that was
worlds-
good. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Our worlds collapsed together sustainably. We sustained that collapse. With it, our mountains conjoined, collapsed into each other, one might say. You know what was not sustained? The dwarves. Yep. So whatever dwarf societies remained open when their mountains collapsed together, after a certain amount of time, they went, oh, you have a rulebook question. They went and said, you know what? We're sick of all of you. We are in fact dying. There is no way to preserve our culture except to close our doors. Any dwarves who are on the outside are on the outside. We're riding this out. And they wrote it out all the way to death. Thank you.
That was beautiful. So much love.
You're our favorite.
And I thought my goblin write-up was blasé. Wow.
That was legendary.